Greetings, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to the 2019 Senior Executive Summit of the Esri International User Conference. My name is James Fallows. I'm a writer, magazine writer, book writer, a friend of Esri, admirer of GIS, and I'll be your host for this day's discussion. I think we have a lot of fascinating material ahead of us today. We conceive of this audience as being people who are involved in the high-end doing of putting GIS tools and related data tools to work in governmental organizations, in city governments, in NGOs, in businesses, in public utilities, in public safety programs, and the entire array of the way people use these tools. And you're going to see a sequence of presentations addressed to those concerns. We're going to start this morning with 4 speakers with fascinating complementary presentations from public agencies, from the US Census, from the British Ordnance Survey, from the Singapore Land Agency, and from a water district here in California. Then we're going to have, after that, we're going to have 3 speakers from business and non-governmental organizations, from the Kohler Company, from CBRE, and from a major local health program here in California. We're going to end the day with 2 extraordinary governors. One has just traveled here from Kenya, and I'll tell you more about him later on. The other is from here in the United States. It is Martin O'Malley, former mayor of Baltimore, governor of Maryland, whose book you all have on the table. And he'll be talking about the way he has tried to pioneer smarter government, using data tools to improve the often criticized and always difficult tasks of running governments at the city level, the state level, and the national level. I mentioned earlier that we're trying to think of a connection among the presentations you'll be hearing today, and indeed those through the rest of the week. I want to say a little bit more about a particular kind of connection before introducing Jack Dangermond, who in a way is responsible for everybody who has gathered at this conference today. There have been different themes that Esri has advanced over the last couple of years to try to crystallize what it is doing. And I think there are 3 of them that stick in my mind. One was the phrase you saw just at the end of this last presentation, the science of where. This is the idea that everything happens somewhere, and for a very large array of human activities, that geospatial tagging, knowing where things happen, can be a very important analytical tool. And so the science of where is sort of the overarching theme for what GIS does around the world in businesses, in governments, et cetera. A second theme that Esri has been talking about recently is called seeing what others can't. That is the idea that there's a view of the world, of business trends, of natural world trends, of any other trend you want to think, which these kind of analytical and depiction tools allow people to have that they wouldn't otherwise get. The way I often think of this is to imagine people working, trying to find their way through a 2-dimensional maze, let's say a cornfield maze or a high hedge maze or something like that, and they can't see where they're going. The concept of seeing what others can't is as if you could rise above that maze and see in 3 dimensions the barriers people are encountering, the blind paths they're going down, et cetera. So that is a second conceptual phrase for what Esri has been doing, of seeing what others can't. One that has been more and more prominent, and I mention all of 3 of these because I think they're worth keeping simultaneously in mind, is the idea that these geospatial information tools constitute a new intelligent nervous system. Let me say why I personally think that's so interesting, and this will be a sort of segue to introducing Jack Dangermond. Has anybody in this room heard of a military strategist named John Boyd? So I have heard of a military strategist named John Boyd, therefore I will tell you about him. Back in the 1980s, John Boyd was celebrated within the US military for having a revolutionary concept of how almost every form of competitive human activity operates. John Boyd had been a successful fighter pilot in the Korean War era. He was a trained pilot for a long time after that. And his idea was that essentially any kind of human interaction or even natural world interaction went through what he called the OODA loop. That's O-O-D-A. And the OODA loop, from his point of view, he described it as observation, orientation, decision, action. Observation, you see what's going on. Orientation, you put that into the framework of where you think you are, where you think you're going. Decision, deciding what is the right next step to take, and action, which is then taking that next step. And John Boyd evolved this from the way fighter pilots were, which planes could outmaneuver the others in the Korean War. And he had it for business. He was a consultant for Toyota for a long time in their interactions with General Motors. And he made this it became celebrated within the militaries around the world, for this idea of how people, how systems, how individuals, how companies, how natural systems were able to respond most accurately and most quickly to the changing array of stimulus around them. In a way, this is a description of a nervous system, a way to have sensors to bring in new data, a way to collect the data in the appropriate places, a way to process it as human beings do, or at least should, in their brains, a way to do it within organizations, et cetera. And so when I read that Esri was now promoting the idea that its tools constitute a new intelligent nervous system, this made instant sense to me. We have the new applications and sensors around the world, which are feeding information all the time. This is the observation stage of the system. We have the ways in which they transmit that to the relevant points of action. This is orientation. We have analytical and decision engines to make it possible to take the next steps. And what we're going to hear about today from our speakers, and tomorrow and after that during the main plenary sessions, is the way these three concepts, the science of where, seeing what others can't, and a new intelligent nervous system, collectively describe the evolving field of which you're all part. I'm going to say no more about that now. At the end of the day, I'll talk about the ways in which our presentations fit into this larger theme. Instead, I'm going to give the podium in just about 30 seconds to my longtime family friend. We grew up in the same little town of Redlands, California, Jack Dangermond, who, of course, with his wife, Laura, has been responsible for creating this company over the decades, and whose combination of technological sophistication and broad humane vision has made the company have the effect that you all see in your businesses and your companies, in your NGOs and in your other activities. So to give us the special tailored for SES senior executive presentation of what to think about practically and technically, and in applications, and for the next stage of products and services you can expect, please join me in welcoming the man who brings us all together, Jack Dangermond.
I want to welcome you. This is a special meeting. It's a special group of people here in this audience. Look around. You're a collection of people representing organizations that don't often assemble together in the same space. The purpose of this meeting is basically to cover some of those subjects that Jim talked about: context, concepts of GIS, some of the emerging technologies. It'll be kind of a preview for what you see tomorrow. Talk about the business value. I know some of you are particularly interested in that, whether it be government or in private sectors. Give you a refresh, for some of you the first time, what the technology trends are that are affecting this geospatial revolution. And then finally, talk about implementation patterns. But before I do that, before I go through those things, the things that are in the lower left of this slide, there's another purpose, and that is to connect you, to get you connected, to talk with each other, to build a kind of relationship of individuals, of professionals, so that you can learn from each other and share knowledge and altogether grow. Because in this room, if you look around, and you'll find out during the day, are a collection of managers, senior executives of GIS organizations. Maybe you're not that technical, some of you definitely are, but understanding what the management challenges are to make these systems really come alive and get the business value is the purpose of today. And I know of no other way other than sharing real experience between you. That's why the cast of characters that get up here are so interesting because they've actually done the work. And they're going to share with you both their perspectives of doing the work and how it's meant something to them. But before we go any further, I'd like you to all stand up and meet one of the people here so that you can get kind of a sense of this room. Can you do that for me now? Extraordinary, isn't it? You think about it. Extraordinary. People that are purposeful, that are in executive positions, that understand the concepts of geography, understand its applications, and working for a purpose. This is an extraordinary room. Well, each of you are running organizations, or certainly in the leadership of these organizations. I thought I would start this talk by sharing a little bit about Esri. This is its 50th year in business. It's been, thank you. It's been working on pretty much exactly the same theme from its very beginning, which is advancing this concept that Jim described very well about the science of where. And I'll go into it more in just a moment. But it is the combination of geography and GIS technology, a new kind of digital science that's growing very fast. Our organization is strong and growing, and those of you in management positions know exactly what that means, what it takes. It takes going all in by a team of people. We've been very fortunate over the years to retain our focus on strong engineering and science. Also, some sideshows. I call them sideshows. They're not sideshows, but promoting spatial literacy and supporting the growth of our own employees. And again, you in management position know exactly what that means. It means supporting your employees to realize their life work. This is part of the magic of what makes my organization work. And then we focused especially on education and on conservation. These are two themes that are well known, and you'll see them against broadly applied tomorrow. And then working on making a difference in partnership with you, our users, on many fronts. Our users are, I would say, beyond my expectations. 7 million users around the world. And they're in almost every kind of organization, as reflected here in this room. Thousands of them, thousands of cities, thousands of national agencies, organizations very similar to the very ones that you run. And I would simply say we can underpin at this moment in time that GIS and geospatial infrastructure, the pattern of GIS at scale, have never been more important. You need not only to read the newspapers to know that we are being challenged on almost every front to create a sustainable future. And while we often think of that as an external thing, one of the purposes of this meeting this week, particularly tomorrow, will be to see exactly how, as managers, we can begin to bring some of that understanding into our own organizations to make a difference. So the purpose of this meeting is to go over some of this technology and some of the patterns and applications that people are applying so that we can see the patterns and copy the patterns and apply them broadly. Some of you are working on GISs in agriculture and natural resources, looking for petroleum resources. 48 of the largest oil companies in the world use GIS to do prospecting, but now also complementing it with environmental sustainability. Many organizations in mining are doing the same thing. And in land cadastre, thousands of organizations are using it to manage the systems of record of land, the foundation for a civil society. Many police departments, law enforcement agencies, emergency responders use it to not only understand patterns of crime, but address them. Address also disasters, flooding, fires, hurricanes, these sorts of things. GIS is delivering value to cities, helping them see and create more sustainable futures, better land use patterns. And I like this little slide on the right that shows the ability to insert a proposed building into an urban infrastructure to see and share what it might look like. It's delivering value at the base level of engineering, and I know some of you work in large engineering companies, and others of you here in this room work in public works agencies. GIS is improving the efficiency and integrating geographic knowledge right into the workflows today of engineering activities, better managing assets, squeezing out efficiency, making organizations more efficient. And in the business sector, wow, this is a treasure for business, finding the right location, like Starbucks does, or like Walmart does, or like Walgreens does, or like Nike does. Nike understands their patterns of customers and put the right thing in the store. And doing supply chain optimization. All of these things are enabled by this interesting science. And some of you here are running major statistical organizations, both census, and we'll hear from the US Census Department's head in a few minutes, the collection of the rational data for the foundation for our democracy in the United States and other countries as well. But we'll also see and hear from people working with GIS in health care and public health. And there's just thousands of applications now, from malaria to Ebola to pragmatic things like this little purple map in the center. This is from Walgreens. They're drugstores. They actually sell medicine to address flu. And this is a flu epidemic map that's come out much faster than the CDC is able to report flu. Isn't that neat? They're just making it available, transforming in many ways how we see and understand ourselves. It's happening at many scales in environment, from groundwater to climate change, to looking at pollution in the oceans, to looking at agriculture. Where best should we plant what? And as we increasingly play into dominating the planet's environment, one of the big themes here will be to take care of it. We'll hear this from Jane Goodall tomorrow. Takari, as she calls it, understanding the resources of our planet and understanding where to do what. Where to plant corn in Mexico, for example. Where to optimize vineyard production in the Silicon Valley, or in the Napa Valley. And in transportation, wow, the world's largest airports are now completely run by a GIS foundation, Atlanta, for example, or Schiphol Airport, or Los Angeles. And optimizing routes. This map in the upper left is bike sharing in Manhattan. Just fun little stuff. But behind this fun little stuff is this driving thing about creating greater efficiency, squeezing out more out of what we have in our resources. And in defense, and in intelligence, national security, the world now is able to see, like this dashboard from NATO, seeing everything, what's going on, issues of conflict, and also the other side of the coin, as we'll hear from Ambassador Toscano tomorrow, who runs the UN demining operation, using GIS for peace. People think of war rooms. He describes them as peace rooms. Where are there potential outbreaks of conflict, and what can we do to address them? Finally, GIS has optimized simple things. I say simple, they're not simple at all, but producing maps at a grand scale, an automated database-driven way to make topographic maps, aeronautical charts, nautical charts, now database-driven. And in this room is the head of the largest mapping organization in the world, who manages for the US the production of billions of, well, not maps. He produces millions of maps, but with billions of features in them, updating them hundreds of thousands of times every month. This is transforming, it's transforming being the building blocks, the foundation pieces for this geographic revolution. Now, moving on a bit, I'll accelerate my speech here. Saying simply, GIS is advancing. It's being driven by, it's integrating in all the new modern sources of data, real-time data, IoT data. It's integrating in new kinds of computing, distributed computing, edge computing. And it's also integrating in many new clever ideas from science and also innovative science in the frontiers of geospatial. And the result, watching this now for 50 years, the result is a kind of co-evolution of these tools accelerating really quickly. It's becoming easy, more accessible, and it's just actually beginning to kick in. The science of where, as Jim elegantly described, is a kind of foundation for a nervous system. I'll go into this more tomorrow. But as our brain operates, stimulus, response. No, it's not simply stimulus and response. It's stimulus, cognition, the integration of values, the integration of experience, the integration of ethics, the integration of reasoning into the process. So GIS is about measurement, and then visualization, seeing, and then analytics, prediction, predictive analytics, and then action, responding, intelligent planning, intelligent-driven decision-making, intelligent-driven and conscious action. This is the science of where. It's a framework and a process grounded in the fundamentals of geographic science, the science of our world. What is a GIS, actually, one might ask? People ask me all the time. I never was able to tell my mother before she passed away. She didn't quite get it. But I tried. I know it was a technical mumbo jumbo. But at this point, I can say it's a system for managing and sharing and applying geographic information or geographic knowledge. It focuses on content, but most people understand it as analytics or mapping. It's also about integration. It's about integrating other kinds of information using geography or location as a common framework. And what's occurring in this field is this rapid, networked, connected, interconnected geospatial nervous system. It's connecting services from different places and the ability to fuse these services and bring them together dynamically. And that's supporting individuals like many of the people in your organization. It's supporting teams working around common geography. It's supporting whole organizations and now extending to include engagement with communities, citizens, volunteer organizations, academics, and the like. And again, these words matter to me. They're really important. It's not only a platform for sharing and collaboration, but it's also a platform for solving problems holistically. And God only knows this is what's needed right now. It's not about going to the right or the left or polarizing political conversation. It's about seeing and then acting in holistic ways. GIS has evolved from desktop or workstation technology to be an enterprise platform. And those of you who are CIOs in the room know approximately what I'm talking about. It's cross-cutting. And it has three main legs. One is that it's a system of record, kind of a buzzword. It's, you maintain the records, like your accounting system, through transactions. It's also a system of analytics or a system of insights. This is like seeing through combining the data like business intelligence tools do. And finally, it's a system of engagement. Through maps and apps, it's reaching out to engage the field. It's reaching out to engage people across the enterprise. And these three pillars are integrated into a common system that's becoming very much real-time by integrating in IoT real-time measurements, the sort of smart city or smart nation idea. It's all coming alive using the power of location to integrate these different kinds of data. And for again, the CIOs in the room, GIS geo-enables enterprise architecture. You know, there's sort of like 3 tiers of enterprise architecture. There's the infrastructure layer, there's the app architecture layer, and there's business systems. Historically, GIS lived in the mission, or we would call it the business system layer. People would buy a desktop, or they'd buy a workstation, or they'd do analytics on a little project. That's how we actually at Esri got started, doing little projects. But in a couple of years ago, this transformed to build a lower level technology which cut right across the enterprise. It geospatially enabled all data and geospatial enabled all kinds of apps. It was a service. So today's vision of GIS is that it's both strong in the mission, in the application areas, but it's also a new leveling concept that can integrate data of many types. Geospatially enabling data maybe is a way to describe it, and geospatially enabling apps. So all apps suddenly have a map. Okay, I'm exaggerating a bit, but that will happen. That's going to happen, believe me. And this is not for academics. This is actually being done in thousands of major corporations around the world. They're leveraging this platform. And it's being done in thousands of governments around the world, from little tiny towns to whole states to national agencies and the UN, for example, looking at the entire world as a platform for addressing the SDGs. Unfortunately, Stefan is not here today, but he was going to speak about his work on building a global nervous system of all the countries' data to address the big challenges that we're facing in the environment. But you'll see enough of it tomorrow to understand what I'm talking about. GIS supports multiple kinds of implementation patterns. Many people that use GIS just have a little desktop, they connect to the web, they do their own work. Others build integrated systems, kind of like ERP systems, like the financial systems or the accounting systems that many of you are used to. But this new pattern, and again, I'm being redundant, this geospatial infrastructure pattern, the pattern that Jim really is talking about, a nervous system, is more than a system. It's a system of systems. It uses a portal to link and interconnect different servers or data sets around the web and allows us to bring them together, to take this person's data and that person's data and overlay it dynamically. This is the sort of magic that we're starting to see, and you will certainly see tomorrow in many demonstrations. Portals abstract and bring together geographic knowledge from many sources. It brings together maps and data, the content side, and registers them in a kind of catalog that you can search easily and discover data. It also organizes people, gives them identity. Not to say that you don't have identity, but I'm saying, identity digitally. And these can be grouped for security reasons. This is very important these days. The ability to organize all aspects of the infrastructure, but also all aspects of geographic knowledge. GIS abstracts these distributed data sets. It reads in imagery, it reads in tabular data, it reads in unstructured data, it reads in vector data, and so on. Reads them in from distributed servers, and then normalizes them dynamically. Again, for IT people here, you'll understand the immense complication of doing this technically. But it's easy. It means I create a common language of maps, which are views of the distributed data sets, which I can mash up from different kinds of sources. Do you guys get this idea? That I'm reading in data from many sources, normalizing it into maps, and then I can overlay these maps, not just visually, but I can analytically connect distributed services in heterogeneous types of formats, imagery data, 3D data, real-time IoT data, and bring it together. This is kind of what your mind does. You look around. This is the digital twin of what your mind actually does. Brings it together and expresses it in the form of maps that can be widely disseminated across an organization. People can use it on their cell phone, the same map as the organization represents in their dashboards. And apps, the corollary to the data sets, can make it come alive. I can see it as a GIS professional. I can look at this distributed data, mash it up, and do sophisticated analytics. But I can spread maps or analytics right across all the parts of an organization, all singing off of an integrated songbook. One map, one view. This was pioneered early on by the city of Singapore, which we'll hear about later, this idea of a one map city where everything is integrated in real time. What's happening, and I'm exaggerating a little bit, but I do see, actually I probably see what others can't. I see that this is coming together at all scales, interconnecting information and processes all at the same time. That's transformational for organizations. Everybody has this definition of what is transformation, you know. To me, this is transformation. The ability to bring all the different measurements and sciences and workflows and activities in an organization together to create a massive integration in a city, or a massive integration in a utility, or a massive integration. There's not another technology like this, ladies and gentlemen. This is not about SQLs or databases or database connections. It's using location, the power of location, to integrate. And for that concept, I believe very strongly that geography and its locational characteristics will increasingly become powerful in organizations. So I'm going to now very briefly cover some of the emerging capabilities that are enabling this, because it's not just the architecture, which I've just explained, but many things are happening. There is emerging on the web millions of content layers that are available for accessing and mashing up the sort of nervous system foundation. These are alive. They're base maps with many overlays to them, the weather, where traffic is. This isn't just like a consumer app, like where's the traffic? No, it's a service that I can integrate in and connect with the weather service and create an app, for example, the post office, of knowing where the weather is and where my trucks and people are, and then alert them. That's not a consumer app, that's just a mashup simply made by an organization. And what I see is that's happening in your organizations at lightning speed. And map technology that we used to sort of take for granted as difficult is being, in part, taken over by the computer so that almost anybody can make beautiful maps. Not only web maps with smart mapping, but also better standardized, more automated production and charting. And then more recently, these map layers are being integrated into things like the Adobe Cloud, so your graphic design people can make beautiful designs, or into Microsoft's technologies like Office, so we can make maps inside of Word or SharePoint. Location analytics is a new term, maybe unfamiliar to some of you, but it's all about being able to drag and drop data into a very intuitive environment and explore it. Just explore data from these different sources dynamically. It's a kind of advanced data business intelligence, but with an emphasis on spatial. 3D visualization keeps pushing. This isn't an isolated stovepipe 3D. It's 3D about everything, buildings, roads, and bringing in content of many types, like massive point clouds. And in this 3D environment, being able to plug it into augmented reality, seeing what others can't, using goggles and so on. Field apps have taken the concepts of GIS to the worker in the field for Survey 123 collection or collector apps, quick capture apps, a brand new technology where you can be in a helicopter and just be click, 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 picking up power poles or picking up observations on the street in a car going 50 miles an hour. And those observations are transactions on a shared database in the cloud. Also, workforce management and navigation and exploration, all managed centrally. This collection of apps extend the fundamental GIS to new audiences. And this is all becoming real time. As we measure everything that moves and changes with sensors, as Jim described, this vision of it coming together as a nervous system all fits into play. These sensors can be looked at, for example, with dashboards. So we see the real-time counts of, for example, homelessness or fire or where our people are or the performance that's going on within an organization's measurements. Imagery has become an integral part of GIS. Used to be separate. We'd have image analytics and we'd have GIS analytics. Now they've fused. So I can read in almost any type of imagery. I can do analytics on imagery like change analysis, feature extraction, but mix it with the fundamental other layers of geography for creating powerful interpretations. For example, I might say this is last night's Landsat take loaded into a cloud that I can pan and zoom on. This actually was last year's take, but I'm pretending it was last night's. It wouldn't matter. These are the hotspots, fires. So if I zoom on here to last year's imagery, we can see actually the Paradise fire burning with different hotspots around it coming from MODIS. And I can see through the clouds using powerful image analytics. And not only see through the cloud to see it, but also automatically extract features from the imagery. Let's call this the fire extent boundary. And now watch. Having done this masking, I can make it as a new layer, and I can overlay it on a base map. And if I pick a 3D base map, I can actually see the extent of the fire. Just like that. Isn't that cool? So these are synoptic measurements coming from remote sensing in near real time, mixed with where all the people are, IoT integration. And once these layers are in a database, I can do analytics. There's hundreds and hundreds of geoprocessing tools to do spatial statistics now, raster analytics, modeling, predictive modeling, network analysis. These you'll see, again, many examples of tomorrow. On the frontiers of our field are the integration of AI, deep learning, machine learning with GIS. GIS in and of itself doesn't include all of those tools, although it does include many. But the ability through Python notebooks to reach out to software libraries and large collections of imagery to do machine learning for feature extraction is becoming relatively easy. And prediction, for example, prediction of the leaks in water mains or the approximately prediction of crime. No way to predict it exactly. But looking at patterns like our brain does, we sort of remember, I wouldn't say memorize, but we have a memory, and we keep learning through experiences. Similarly, this technology is an important ingredient for building that nervous system. GIS has traditionally been for GIS professionals, but in recent years we've been building interesting developer tools for all kinds of developers, not just in our community, but in the open developer community, being able to do client-side mapping. These are JavaScript 4.0 tools, and I know some of you won't understand what I'm talking about, but listen, this is a technology that allows you to stream data across the web, and it's a little software library in a browser that allows you to do analytics in the browser. No software needed. It's very cool. And that's happening both in 2D and also in 3D. So why I predict that this is going to go very broadly is because the thousands of little startup companies who are trying to put spatial into their apps, maps into their apps, will be availing the content that's being built by your organizations, not only for enterprise apps, but also beyond. And app builders now are commonplace. This web app builder we introduced 2 years ago, it's resulted in about 500,000 apps being built. There's actually more. I'll close by just, again, giving you an orientation to what you'll see tomorrow. Esri has basically had one product called ArcGIS. This has been its home framework, and it's used for the GIS market. You'll see many GIS professionals, and many of them are on your staff. More recently, like about 10 years ago, we began to introduce it as a web mapping platform. This has resulted in millions of users simply subscribing to mapping on the web. And finally, this location analytics environment, and now developer. So you get the idea, this is our main product strategy. But a year ago, we began introducing something called geo-enabled systems. These are highly specialized solutions for urban planning, business, now indoors, and situation awareness. These are focused applications you might think of. And they are all available in what we're framing or calling the geospatial cloud. So our strategy is really software and also increasingly SaaS solutions, because people are pushing us to move more in that software as a service operation. ArcGIS is the focus of this. It's a comprehensive platform. It's designed to work for individuals as well as organizations at many scales. And it's open. I can't emphasize this enough. It supports all the open standards. It supports more spatial standards than any technology of its kind. It also integrates open science libraries. The whole new revolution that's occurring in data science just connects and integrates with it through Python notebooks. It has many open APIs, and open data is a big theme. And then Esri open sources over 700 components of our software into GitHub for customization and configuration and extendability of the tools. And many of our users are contributing and working with us in that domain. This is an important strategy for us because it means that we can integrate well with other major, complex, heterogeneous environments. And the evidence that this is successful is evidenced by the enormous success it's been having in enterprise spaces. Well, Jim, I've covered, I think, pretty much everything I wanted to say, except the following. This technology is now driving and delivering enterprise systems. That's a major step. And some of you have implemented it in that setting. And we'll hear from you this morning in your efforts to do it. That just didn't happen. It's required mission leadership, executives just like yourselves who get involved in it. It isn't sort of like a passive, okay, those are the guys down the hall. The most successful systems that I've seen are where executives are actually involved in it. At the Ordnance Survey, it was the executive leadership that really augured right into it. They just turn it over to the techies. No, they wanted to understand its strategic value. And they prototyped and iterated to build their systems, which have now resulted in enormous cost savings and efficiency. And also investments in developing the workforce. This isn't so, oh, go take a couple classes, on the web. No, it means a commitment to building and transforming your workflow force and then having them stay current. When you go in that room tomorrow, you'll see 18,000 people who are aggressively pushing the envelope to stay current on the technology. That really is part of the game here. This is not a sort of passive, it'll take care of itself thing. And finally, a culture of collaboration. Many of you know these cultures, the idea that we can do this together feeling, and continuous innovation. From, again, my perspective in running Esri, this has been the magic of our success as we continuously reinvest over 30% of our entire revenue back into R&D. And while that's more than what normal companies could ever imagine, the idea that you're committed to innovation on an ongoing basis is the kind of organization that is required for the 21st century. So, GIS and geospatial infrastructure are important. You already know that or you wouldn't be here. Also, delivering value and transforming organizations in this technology that's rapidly advancing is something that all executives like yourselves need to stay in focus. And also leadership, not just being at the effect of technology, but being the cause of the transformations is essential. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I'm looking forward to meeting and spending more time with some of you and also listening to these great presentations that you're about to hear. And don't miss tomorrow. It'll transform your life, I promise you. Thank you.